This next topic that I want to talk about is inspired by this lady, Caroline Littman. So I'm not going to go into huge detail on who she is, because I'd quite like to have her as a guest and for her to say her story and point of view and to talk about her book. You can find her on Blue Sky, and she has a thread here explaining why she's here. And warning for anyone, we're going to be talking about suicide briefly, but that's not the main point of the segment. But Caroline had a trans daughter who very unfortunately committed suicide, and it's grim, and Caroline is very honest and open about how she held transphobic views and changed her mind. And she's experienced a lot of horrible stuff, and I really feel for her, and it's definitely worth checking out, at the very least, this thread explaining her story. But she has written a book. It's coming out in March 2025, and it's called Her Name is Alice. I have pre-ordered it. I haven't been sponsored. I've talked to Caroline like twice through Twitter DMs or whatever. I don't know her. I just think she would be a good guest. And she seems like a nice person who does genuinely care about this. And maybe her book is good. Maybe her book is terrible. I don't know, because I haven't read it and I wouldn't be paid to say anything about it. But I have pre-ordered it. Anyway, her book is probably going to be quite powerful, and it's definitely getting some attention from the media. Caroline Littman today said that the Times had asked to interview her and review her book, and she wasn't sure whether she should accept it or not. So hopefully we can have her as a guest in the future, and if she doesn't want to come as the guest in the future, we'll go more into her story, and maybe we'll talk about her book when it comes out or something. Anyway, she's just the catalyst for this next section I wanted to talk about, which is, I think when I first started doing like trans rights activist stuff, the position was you shouldn't give your credibility, time, and energy and into legitimizing a transphobic publication. So if like The Guardian said, can we write an article about you? Would you like to be interviewed? In like 2015 or whatever, you'd probably say yes. Or maybe you'd be more inclined to say yes. Whereas if the Daily Mail said it, or like The Spectator, you'd be like, well, firstly, I can't trust you to not, smear everything I say and write a terrible article. And secondly, even if I can, I don't want to like say, oh yeah, I'm fine with you being transphobic. I'm happy to come on your thing and just pretend like everything's fine. Because it legitimized transphobia. And there was this kind of like boycott of transphobic publications from the entire LGBT community, not just trans people. And I do, by the way, I shouldn't be cutting in this, I do use a password manager, and that's why I can't remember my password. I have a separate profile on Chrome, which is not logged into anything, with no bookmarks, just so I don't accidentally click on something and reveal my password, or like there's some personal details or something. I think it's a safe way of doing it, but it means there is no like extensions or anything. So the password manager is not connected to this. Anyway, there used to be like an industry boycott kind of thing going on, where LGBT people in general would say, I don't want to work with these publications. And if you said you wanted to, you could get quite a bit of pushback from the LGBT community, because it's almost like being a scab. Like, if one of the newspapers used to be fine and then suddenly starts publishing a load of gender critical stuff, everyone's like, right, we shouldn't write for these people anymore. We shouldn't work for them. We shouldn't give them our time, labor, and put our reputations like on the line for them. And if you do, then you're kind of like undermining everyone who's agreed to not do that, especially if they are themselves journalists and they're trying to make a living from writing, and then you're like taking their gig. And the idea at the time that I agreed with to some extent, or to a large extent, was in the hope that if we all turn our backs on the one gender critical publication, then maybe they'll realize and they'll stop doing that. I think, at least from my point of view or my understanding at the time, 10 years ago, I think that was a fine position. I wasn't 100% on board with it, but my overall conclusion was that was okay. I don't think that argument holds up in 2025. I don't think it's held up for like several years. The idea that the trans community could boycott a publication and make any difference is like delusional. The idea that we're in a position to like give our legitimacy and our credibility to them, like gender critical is the mainstream in the UK at least. There are no mainstream media publications, none of the big newspapers which are even neutral on trans rights, let alone positive. They're all anti-trans rights of some flavour. They all have gender critical columnists who continuously lie about us and aren't fact checked at all. They're all garbage, and they completely control the media landscape. They have all the power and we have no power, and the idea that we could like do anything about that through boycotts or turning our backs on them or for even criticizing them is just, that isn't the world we live in right now. And so I think that we should instead look at it the way that someone like Nigel Farage did in 10 years before Brexit happened. In this kind of all publicity is good publicity. Not quite that extreme, and I'm not saying Nigel Farage is good. I think he's a dickhead and was wrong, and Brexit was the worst thing to happen to the UK in my lifetime. But one thing that right-wing people are very good at, and they have just clearly, observably, successfully used, is just getting on everything. They say yes to everything. Even if, like, a good example of this is when the guy who used to be in charge of the BNP, like, managed to get a slot on the TV. He went on, got absolutely humiliated, and yet the BNP suddenly had a surge of interest. When people go on and they say their views, when they're not the mainstream, they get platformed and they gain more than the people exploiting them. Because absolutely, like, when the Times was to, if the Times was to review Caroline Littman's book, like, the Times is one of the major forces in the UK that's legitimizing transphobia, and they're just basically exploiting this. They're partially to contribute to the situation that led to her daughter's passing and many other trans people. The Times is garbage, but they have a huge platform, and we should, instead of seeing ourselves as like correct and being able to shun them, I think we're in a more desperate position, and we should start saying, right, okay, I know what this thing is. This is an exploitative news organization that absolutely hates trans people and is trying to make money off us and eradicate us at the same time. However, given that, potentially in this situation, we can go on here and get our voice out and be a pest like Nigel Farage was, where he just went on every single fucking TV channel for 10 years, and then all of a sudden Brexit happened. We should do a similar thing, but not a similar thing. So Caroline Littman asked Blue Sky what they thought, and people gave different views, and my view was that she should go on and do this if a few conditions were true. One, that she could be sure this journalist would, like, not every journalist at the Times is a gender critical wacko. Like, quite a few of them are, and clearly the editors are very approving of that, or are themselves gender critical wackos, but not everyone who works there is. And sure, you could say, oh, you know, they're all complicit in transphobia. Sure, okay. But there's a difference between someone who might just see this as a neutral thing, or not really care about trans people, or not even really like trans people, but it's going to do their job and give at least a neutral, fair review of this, and someone who's just going to twist it and, you know, be horrible and stuff. And I think that as if you can be sure that this journalist is going to do an okay job. They don't have to give you a book, like, you don't have to search for people who are going to give your book a good review, but as long as it's going to be someone who's going to do a fair review of it, or some kind of anti-trans extremist review, then the publicity is worth it. And I know that, you know, she's trying to sell a book and she'll make money from selling a book and blah, 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 all this kind of rubbish, but I think that she genuinely cares, and her book getting in front of people, I haven't read it, maybe the book's terrible, but it at least theoretically could be good for trans people. It's just another perspective for people to empathize with, and we need multiple stories, not just one story. And yes, she's a cis person, but cis people speaking up for trans people is good too. I don't know. I think that I will start saying yes to some more middle of the road and hostile to trans people, but not just like a propaganda machine situations, because I think that it'd be good to just get our voice out to more people. And if you disagree with me, cool, great. Please tell me. This argument is evolving, and go and tell Caroline too, but there's no point in being rude or aggressive about it. I mean, you can be rude and aggressive to me, and you know, I'm used to it, but there's no point being it to anyone else. And yeah, I don't know. I think that the landscape has shifted so much. We just have to go on for it. I don't know what you guys think. I genuinely want to know. I have talked to quite a few people about this for years, and I just think things have changed a bit. And I do think one of the things that's changed my mind a little bit is this situation where, this is going to be cringe, I'm sorry, but American politics, Joe Rogan, everyone quickly close the stream now. Joe Rogan is absolutely garbage, an absolute bell end, terrible person. Podcast is absolutely terrible. Every clip I've ever seen from it has been awful. But for some reason, he is the most listened to podcaster in the world. And if I got invited on 10 years ago, I would have said no. Partially because I would have been terrified, and partially because I would have thought, I don't want to legitimize this bullshit. If I got invited on today, I'd be terrified and I would say yes. Because I think that it's just worth getting a voice out to that many people. And during the election campaign, Donald Trump went on there, and obviously it's a very pro-Donald Trump audience, and he received like no pushback and no real scrutiny. And if Kamala Harris had gone on there, she would have received all kinds of bad faith questions, and a trans person would be even more like, you know, instantly walking into like the snake pit or whatever the phrase is. That's probably not I'm sorry. But I just think if you are ready for that, and you know what you're going into, and you're not being tricked into something, and you're aware of the various levels of exploitation going on, and you have a good message and you know how to communicate it, probably net positive. There absolutely will be people listening to that who have never gone on anything before, never encountered anything before where they've even heard a trans person speak that isn't through the lens of like, some crazy feminist said this. And they'll hear you saying on point, staying calm, staying on topic, making an argument that's decent. If you can do those things, if you're someone who's going to like flip out and panic or like start shouting or whatever, you've got to be aware of the audience you're going on there for. And I'm not tone policing. If you want to do those things, do it on your own channel. Do it on a channel that's friendly to you. Amazing. Do it on my channel. But I do think we just need to get in front of more people and make good arguments that aren't just sex and gender are different, actually. So yeah, that's my current view. That's where my thinking is at the moment, and it could evolve over time to more or less of whatever that is. I don't know. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you think. I've seen that the chat's kind of split on this, and that's kind of what I thought people would say. Some people are saying they agree about getting in front of lots of people. And some people are saying they disagree because it's a trap. Yeah, okay, the debate thing is a good point. I would never attend a debate that was like, do trans people deserve rights? Debate. Katie, would you like to defend it? Because I think the framing on that is so bullshit. I mean, I would absolutely attend a debate that said, is gender criticalism aligned with Nazism? Like, if that was the debate title, or is gender critical a morally acceptable position? Because the framing is good. And you know what? None of them would fucking do any of that because they know the framing is terrible. And even them being there would legitimize that point of view. So they just wouldn't do it. And that's why they're always like, come on my show, let's debate whether trans people are human or not. So don't do those. They are garbage. They are completely stupid. Debates are bullshit. Like, structured debates are just complete waste of time. But if it was like, you could be a guest on a show and the show is like a bit more hostile or sympathetic of right-wing positions or ignorant, or, you know, they've said, it seems like J.K. Rowling's kind of lost her mind a bit, but maybe some of the things that she fundamentally believes are okay, and I don't know, if we want to hear from a trans person, we could have one on and see what everyone thinks. Like, that kind of thing, we're like, oh yeah, we'll have you on for discussion, and I'm going to ask you some hard questions and probably be a bit hostile, but I'm going to let you talk, and it's not just a performance. I think that is kind of good. Yes, I totally agree. A debate is a rigged game. All debates are bullshit. Like, they're not good. I don't enjoy watching them, even when it's someone saying what. I don't know what's worse. When it's someone I agree with saying something I agree with, destroying some idiot. Boring. And if it's not, frustrating. And they're always just set up to be. It's almost like a dance. Like, it's like, these two people are going to dance for your pleasure and you already want one of them to win. And then when it finishes, you're going to think they won. Just completely ridiculous. Yeah, exactly. And again, like Stephanie's here saying, beware of dishonest interlocutors. That is such a fucking internet skeptic thing you can, like, to say. You can tell that that's where me and Stephanie met. It's like the atheist skeptic debate world. Yes, totally agree. So the phrase beware dishonest interlocutors is what you say to mean look out for someone who is just lying or trying to use you to get views or to get like a quote that they can then take out of context, because those people are a dime a dozen, especially in gender critical land. There's no value to like going on some extreme like gender critical dickhead who thinks you're subhuman, who's gonna just talk over everything you say or lie about their own position or try and trap you into something by holding contradictory beliefs at the same time. And yeah, like, you need to look out for this stuff for sure. And that's why what I said to Caroline Littman was like, you need to check out this journalist first, because there are a lot of dishonest interlocutors in the Times newspaper. So yeah, Bernice, they're saying the problem is they will never let us talk. That is true of like some situations. Sometimes, like if it's a right-wing news channel, sometimes they just want you on to say one line, so that then they can be like, see, we've got a trans person, and now we're going to just talk over them and say our ignorant bullshit, and everyone's going to agree with us on to the next segment. That is a bad situation to go on. But that isn't all of them. And debates are kind of bullshit because it's all going to be like, they've decided what they're going to say. They're not going to respond to what you say. Debates are just shit. But if you can have a channel that is going to actually let you talk, even if they're going to start from the position of not really respecting you as a person, there are going to be people watching who will listen, and you're going to be able to say something.